Elizabeth, the prospective parliamentary candidate for Dartford, is in the studio with me this evening to talk about this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the studio to discuss this important subject. Once again, good evening and welcome to Voice of Africa
welcome,
Radio.
Madam, and thank you for having us.
Yes, Jacqueline, Britain is a member of the European Union, and for that matter, by convention, when the economy of any member state, the European member state is growing, you have to pay more to the kitty, to the budget of the union. Britain was asked to pay 1.7 billion pounds to the European Union, and this brought about a whole lot of discussion on the British press. The Prime Minister refused to pay and said, if anybody thinks Britain will pay, then they must have a second look. He's not willing to pay. Now, yesterday, a day before yesterday, they came out to tell us that they've been able to negotiate and we are going to pay half of the bill, but not on the time, but it will be paid installment without interest. So if we will pay, why then did we take so long a time to create more controversies over this money? And do you think Britain should pay this amount to the European Union, as we are part of the European Union?
Well, Adam, what a short question that was. Thank you.
My question is, do you think that Britain should contribute to the kitty of the European Union?
Well, as a member of the Socialist Party of the World Socialist Movement, we have no interest in the European Union, borders, markets, capitalism itself. We wish to abolish it. However, you've asked a question, and the answer to that question is, this is a dispute between different capitalist governments over who pays what, and is of no concern to the majority of the European population, us, the workers, we who go out for a wage or a salary, who are exploited in employment. It is of no concern to us. This is capitalists squabbling amongst themselves, paying themselves large amounts of money.
Well, Mahmoud, Prime Minister Mr. Cameron did state that because of this amount of money which the European Union asked Britain to pay, it has created an atmosphere whereby majority of the British public, the voters, are becoming anti-Europe. Is it true that majority of British voters are now becoming anti-Europe?
I don't think it's now. I think it's happened for a long time. There's been a constant propaganda from political schools of thought to believe that we should be out of Europe. British should not be part of a stronger economy to stand up to economy like America, China and India, and the two emerging economies now. Our belief is that we should be a strong, united continent, and gives us a much bigger negotiating power. As to the actual money, there's a much more simpler way of understanding this. If I'm unemployed, the government will help me to pay my rent and etc. When I get a job, I will pay taxes back to the government. If I get a pay rise, I'm earning more, I'll pay more. So the GDP of this country has gone up. So Britain is now asked to pay a bit more towards it. It's as simple as that. If you're saying British should not pay it, then what you're saying, the rich shouldn't pay any taxes. It's the same principle, along the same argument.
Well, Elizabeth, this is playing into the hands of the UKIP. When the Chancellor said, yes, we've been able to negotiate, Britain is no longer going to pay 1.7 billion, but we'll be paying 800 or so million pounds to the European Union. Nigel Farage, Mr. Ed Miliband said, no, Britain will still pay all the money. They are just a smoke and a mirror scenario. What is your take on this?
I completely agree. It's a complete and utter con on the general public. And it's all sound and noise signifying nothing. It's happening with a view to the by-election on the 20th of November in Rochester and Stroud, which, of course, the Tories are very worried about losing. And, of course, it's happening with the longer-term view of the general election on the 7th of May 2015. So it's simply a propagandist, spin, doctory kind of manoeuvre by Cameron. It's absolute rubbish. Not one penny has been saved for the taxpayer. The situation was that 1.7 billion was allegedly due to the EU. Why? Because there's been a change in the accountancy rules. It's very difficult to get any clear information with regard to EU matters. It's not known as to whether this is backdated tax to 2002 or indeed 1995. But what it factors in is alleged money, I don't know how you work it out, from the grey economy, the criminal economy, from drug dealing and prostitution. That's lumped into the amount we spend on weapons, because in the United Kingdom, as you can appreciate, we have a significant military presence throughout the world. So I assume they're factoring the amount of money that the British government is buying from British arms producers in Britain. It's not export income, it's internal. Also, we have a big charity sector, and they're factoring in the income from the charity sectors. And also they're factoring in income from R&D, from our scientific research. To me, it's a fiction, it's a nonsense, it's rubbish. It's simply a means to grab money off us. So are you saying that the economy of Britain is not in any way growing, but because the European Union wanted to get money from Britain, they've created an environment, an artificial economic environment to say that British economy is growing, and for that matter, you have to pay this amount towards the European budget. Is that what you mean? I'm saying that the indicators that they've given for the accountancy rules for working out how much our rebate is are based on a fiction, based on the grey economy. How on earth can you work out how much money this country spends on prostitution and drugs? How can you work that out accurately? And bearing in mind it's illegal, why is the EU seeking to take payment from that income? Does the EU seek to be the world's biggest pimp? Does the EU seek to facilitate and condone such behaviour? I don't know. However, the situation was, allegedly, we got the figure, 1.7 billion, plucked out of the sky. I don't know how they've worked it out. And Cameron thinks he's been oh so clever because he's reduced it at 850 million. Well, what he's done is basically offset the rebate that we were due of 780 million against that outstanding amount. So there's not a penny saved. We've now lost our rebate as part of this instalment payment, and he's going to pay it in instalments in July and September of next year. So no financial gain to this country at all.
Mahmoud, why did we delay or why are we delaying in paying this amount of money? And why was the Conservative government coalition with Liberal Democrat kept on saying that this money is not going to be paid? Mr. Cameron said this money, if anybody thinks he's going to pay this money, you have to have a second thought about it.
It's Osborne and Cameron, really, because even on this radio station, I said that this was just a ploy. It wasn't right, and that because we're earning more, we would have to pay more. So something you're going to have to ask Cameron and Osborne, really, and something they're going to have to ask, question the electorate, why they misled people. This gang-ho of absolute power is a wrong way forward. We need to work together with people, not work against people, and move forward.
Well, Elizabeth,
yes,
haven't realized the important role the European economy is playing as far as British businesses are concerned, would it be prudent for Britain to distance itself from the EU?
Yes, of course it would be. Of course it would be. We have, excuse me. In about the first 3 months of this year, we were trading, I think we did about 60% of our trade with countries outside the EU. We want to be free to trade with whoever we want, how we want, without having to be involved in any tariffs or any complicated negotiations with the EU. We don't need the EU. We were trading in a successful nation up to 1973 when we joined the EU. Why all of a sudden have we suddenly taken the retrograde step and now all of a sudden we actually have to pay people to trade with us? It's a nonsense. And also, it certainly has made the public sit up and think. The latest YouGov poll has EU withdrawal 41%, EU remaining 38%. So I remember about a month ago the figures were slightly much closer, but now it seems that this has upset the electorate.
Well, Jacqueline, do you believe that Britain can stand on its own as an island to compete with countries like China and United States when it comes to trade if we are out of the European Union?
Well, that's a very good description of capitalism itself. the borders, the different countries, the nations, the different governments, etc., etc. It only hurts the workers, the majority of the
How
world's
does it hurt the
population.
workers? We are in together.
No, we are not in it together. You are not. Where is your luxury yacht? Where is the banqueting and feasting? When did you last go and do another charity do and raise several £1 million that is supposed to trickle down, etc., etc.? We are not in it all together. Now, politicians like my two good friends here, Elizabeth and Faz, they know what international socialists say. We say abolish this system. We do not have to carry on. Britain can no longer go around pillaging the world. Neither can France, neither can Belgium. They were all in it together, even Germany at the end. All over the world, pillaging, rampaging and looting. This hurts us. This is why we have people coming from Eastern Europe being told that governments are allowing them into the country. They are fleeing war. They are fleeing poverty.
In Eastern Europe, there isn't any war.
There was a war. Do you think it just finished like that? How quickly do you think people recover? Go and have a look at Haiti, where there was a
tsunami.
No. Tsunami. But several years ago, there was an earthquake there. Go and look. They're still living in tents, still not being dealt with.
But
the
they are not getting here. The argument is
this. It doesn't matter where in the world. Sorry, Adam.
If Britain gets out of the EU, would it be very good for an island such as Britain to compete with countries like China and the United States when it comes to trade and
Let me put it
investment?
like this. Britain must be suffering from some sort of illness if it thinks it can do that. Number one, that's like saying socialism could exist in one place. It has never existed anywhere in the world. Cuba's not socialist. Russia was never socialist. Scotland definitely not. And France, forget it. None of these places anywhere in the world. Tell me where. Never.
Well,
you ask the question, Adam, will it stand on its own? That's like saying socialism can exist in one part of a capitalist sea. It's impossible. We're in capitalism. They have to trade. Trade means war, poverty and hunger, homelessness, unemployment, employment, and disruption and dispersion for workers around the world. We are fleeing from so much now.
Mahmoud, can we do it by ourselves as a small island?
I think people have not learned lessons from history. If you look at Asia, Africa, they don't have a trading bloc. And look how bad their economies are because they cannot negotiate powerful now with things like with North America. What Britain within the European Union allows us to do, and it allows to some of the things that, if you don't mind me, it does do, it does allow workers to go from one country to another, seek the best conditions of employment and the best wages for themselves. It allows an employer to seek an employee with the best talent possible. Let me just give you a few names, yeah? EasyJet, Vodafone, Kellogg's, Nissan, Unilever, BT, Nestle's, Siemens, BEA, ABC, Honda, Hyundai, Kingfisher, Airbus, BMW, Hitachi, all are saying that if we left the EU, and this is the big ones, even the Federation Small say that if we left the EU, we will not be there. And let's remember when Nissan came over first, yeah? One of the things they said it would come out is the amount of talent pool in this country and that they could trade freely with the rest of Europe gives them a much bigger trading bloc. Don't listen to politicians, listen to the people who matter, who give jobs, who give employment, who give GP.
But the people that matters are those who are saying that, yes, now because of the way Mr. Cameron and his government handled the 1.7 billion to be given to the European Union, we've had enough of the EU and we want to be out of EU. Elizabeth,
yes.
Is this once again becoming one of the aims and objective of Mr. Farage and the UKIP to just tell the British people that you can do it alone, in as much as our trade this year alone was with the European Union was about 845 billion pounds?
Of course we can do it alone. We've always done it alone historically. Always.
But globally, our trade this year was 1.147 billion, and 840 something billion was with the European Union alone. So if you take out of it,
but we're still in a big trade deficit. You have to understand the EU gets a lot more from us than we get from them. And as I said, in the first 3 months of this year, about 60% of our trade.
How do they get more from you than we get from them?
Because we buy far more of their goods and services than they buy from us. They're getting more out of us than we are getting out of them. So, and I said at the beginning of this year, the first 3 months trading, I think about 60% of our trade was with countries outside the EU. You've got Japan, you've got New Zealand. All these countries are island states, so to speak, and they're doing well. Their economies are working. We can still enter into free trade negotiations. We can take up our seat at the World Trade Organization. We have confidence in the future, unlike the rest of the European countries, and unlike many of I would say the vast majority of this world. We have very secure property rights. You can come to this country and buy property. You can enter into a contract, buy a car, buy plant and machinery, and you own it. This is a very rare thing. Many jurisdictions simply do not have security of tenure and do not have security of property law. We have the English language, one of the simplest, easiest languages to learn, one of the most effective languages around the world. We have the rule of law. We have a significant history behind us. We have a great deal to offer, whether we are in the EU or not. In fact, the EU is feeding off our great standing in the world. We have a fantastic standing in the world. We don't need the EU. The EU needs us, of course. And if and when we did.
But your position in the EU, Angela Merkel kept on reminded Mr. Cameron that the way he's going about things, she would not be bothered if Britain exit from the EU. Isn't this a threat to the United Kingdom?
This is not a threat at all.
We need the EU.
This is not a threat at all. Yes, they need us more than we need them. And if we go back to 1984, when Margaret Thatcher managed to secure a very significant rebate for this country because of the unfairness with regard to the common agricultural policy funding, because the majority of our industry and income doesn't come from agriculture, whereas many of the EU countries were benefiting significantly from that. She managed to secure us a very significant rebate. Basically, we get back about 2/3 of the net contribution we pay every year in the previous years. We get that back about 2/3. And what she did, she told them that she would withhold all payments of contributions altogether. And she left it at that. And they immediately caved. She has a backbone. David Cameron doesn't. There lies in the difference.
Well, Mahmoud, the Association of Business Institution in Britain, CBI, the chairman has stated that if it comes to a referendum today, in-out referendum, the British businesses will vote for Britain to stay in the European Union, because without the European Union, most of the businesses will collapse. How do you think that people who want to get out of Europe to maintain their investment in Europe, in Britain, can one way or the other said we need the bigger Europe so that we can belong to this kind of club and trade amongst themselves?
Just endorse what the Lib Dem are saying, what I've just said, really, that we need a much bigger trading club, much bigger bloc, so that we can trade much bigger. Country that they would make a bloc or a good trading bloc, such as Asia and Africa, look at the way they're suffering. Why go backwards? Why do UKIP and Tories want to take us backward? Let's go forward, where we work together, trade together, where employer can bring in the best talent to work in this country, and our talented can go to another country and seek employment.
Why do you say UKIP and UKIP and Conservative wants to take Britain back?
Well,
Why?
They are taking it back, because if the
in what
CBI,
sense?
the people who meant, because what you got is what you got now at the moment is a porous trading border, where we, as someone who say exports things, I can export my things quite easily right across Europe, cut it down.
But you pay 55 million every day.
Sorry?
You pay 55 million every day to belong to the club of traders.
the club of traders to run the administration of that. Yes, if I belong to an association in my profession, then I have to pay money for that association because I want to be part of it. I want it professionalism. I want good trading terms. It's still there. But look at the figures. Half our trade is done within that club. That's like saying I don't want to be a part of. I don't want a part of something that gives half.
But
of
Elizabeth
my wages.
is saying that you can take your seat at World Trade Organization. You can trade with the Africans.
So Africa and Asia, look where they are.
You can trade with the Africans. You can trade with the Far Easterns. You can trade with the Asians. So wouldn't that be enough for Britain to survive?
Well, I mean, if you say it's enough, then what's the problem with Asia and Africa? Why are they not affluent?
Because they cannot, the sense of the spirit of negotiation in those places are not.
You don't have a big bloc, a political.
They have a big bloc, but they don't have a political will. And the World Trade Organization is not being fair to the African nations.
But how is it going to get faced by you having a bigger say in it? And Britain has a bigger say in it about being a part of Europe, a much bigger bloc.
It was bigger before the European Union, so why can't Britain hold it forth, but to join a group of European countries to become the strongest nation?
It's negotiated at a different level, at different angles. Now, we're all negotiated going in the same direction with the same argument. And that's why Europe is so affluent and this country is so affluent, our trade is doing well.
Well, you still tune into Voice of Africa Radio, and it's 27 minutes after 7 o'clock. I have in the studios Jacqueline from SPGB, Mahmoud, Fiaz Liberal Democrat, Leytonstone and Wanstead, Elizabeth The Rock Jones, prospective parliamentary candidate for Dartford, and Deputy Chairwoman for SADC, is in the studio discussing this important issue with me as to Britain to stay in the European Union, or as the polls are indicating, majority of voters in quote would want Britain out of the European Union. But today Mr. Cameron is addressed the CBI, said that Britain has got a good relationship with the European Union, talking about trade, but the problem now is with the immigration, the migrant coming into Britain. That is what British should negotiate. But Angela Merkel also said that if Britain is going to do that way, she wouldn't hesitate. She will withdraw her support when it comes to the showing the Britain the door. She will support the group to exit Great Britain out of European Union. And this, according to business authorities, will be a damning, it will have a damning consequences on Britain. Elizabeth.
Yes.
Britain taking it all alone. The businesses are saying that we wouldn't support that because it's going to have a bigger effect on Britain businesses and commerce. Do you think that we can do it all by ourselves without the European Union, in as much as studies are showing that Britain is getting more educants from Eastern Europe than anywhere else, and the migrants coming in here are contributing immensely to the economy of Great Britain? Why do you think that Britain should be alone or should leave the European Union?
Well, Britain has never been alone. Let's make that clear. When people say Britain is isolated or Little Britain, Britain has never ever been alone. From the outset of history, Britain has always traded internationally, and we always will trade internationally. Well, let's just look. All right, we've been in the EU. That didn't stop Ford in Southampton moving their entire plant to Turkey because they wanted even lower wages. It didn't stop Tate & Lyle in Silvertown being subject to closure. It didn't stop Siemens' contract going to Germany. There are a lot of issues whereby we're still in the EU and we're still losing business abroad. In fact, perhaps we probably lost more business through being in the EU because of the tendering process, whereby our public contracts have to be up for tender throughout the whole of the EU. So we probably could well be losing more business. We have confidence. We have a great legal system. We have clear-cut property ownership. We will succeed.
Well, you still tune into Voice of Africa Radio, and we are discussing this important issue. But let's put these statistics out so that we can look at it critically and see whether if we are in together or we are out will help us. Today, GLA report shows London's firm exported 147 billion of goods and services worldwide in the year to mid-2014, with 84 billion of that in sales to Europe. The sum represents about 8% of the capital firm's total annual sales. About 4/5 of London export traded with Europe, with micro enterprises that employ between 1 and 9 workers, particularly reliant on the European market. Elizabeth.
Well, if we leave the EU, we will still be trading with the EU. Those are the figures. I don't know, we'll have to look at those in more detail later. However, we're selling to Europe. Europe is selling even more to us. Europe has a lot more to lose by us leaving. In the event that we did withdraw from the EU, we would still have trading agreements and trading arrangements. These people need to trade with us.
The bigger they are, we have to negotiate with them on their terms because we want to capture the bigger market. Wouldn't it be better if we stay in together and negotiate so that we will have a good terms with the European Union than getting ourselves out of it?
No, because as I said earlier, we're already losing business. We had Ford.
How are we losing business?
Because Ford plant left Southampton to go to Turkey. We lost that. We're in the EU. We lost that contract, despite being in the EU, despite Ford having the glorious opportunity for free workers, free borders. They chose Turkey, another country which is outside the EU. We had the problem with Siemens contract. Bombardier lost out to Germany. And we have lost business contracts as a result of being in the EU. And also,
are we not considering some of the factors that led to these companies moving out their plans to another countries like taxation? It's
to do with, if we quote Bob Crow, he said that the EU social legislation has not saved one job in this country, that EU legislation has in fact brought in a culture of low pay, 0 hours contracts and impermanency. And that's Bob Crow. So if he thinks like that,
but
it's clearly
the
isn't.
Low pay would be better for the businesses to thrive. If Ford had got cheap labor in Britain and taxes are fairer to them, they would have preferred working in Britain than moving to Turkey.
I don't know what the full deal was with their move to Turkey. However, does that help our country? Okay, so we got lower and lower wages. It means we've got a larger and larger revenue deficit.
Well, Mahmoud, before we introduce our next topic, Dr. Aziz Dao is in the studio with us this evening. We will be getting to him. Mahmoud, what Elizabeth is saying, she said we are in the Europe and Britain is losing more of its enterprises, industries to other nations.
I can tell you as a business person who trades and actually does work and knows practically things from it, I can tell you that I can now take my goods, put it into a vehicle, drive to France and sell it to somebody. It's as simple as that. That's why micro businesses benefit so much from being within Europe. Large and small businesses, all of them benefit. Just give you an argument. Imagine every African country of continent got together and made a bigger trading bloc. Look how forward think they'd be. What great negotiating powers they would have.
Well, it already has.
It's got the African Union, but it's a toothless bulldog. A union that is being sponsored by China. How can it have the bargaining power? How can it have the negotiating power?
Europe is it? And it's just been sponsored now by China. Europe's been doing this since the 70s.
Britain is giving 20 million to Sierra Leone. African Union is giving 28 million to the 3 nations which are affected, which are predominantly Ebola infected country. How can this union work?
What our argument and the point was, That what I said is, every African nation since the 70s
Well,
traded together, they have a much bigger trading bloc.
Well, now let's move on to our next most important topic this evening on Voice of Africa Radio. 35 minutes after 9 o'clock, after 7 o'clock on Voice of Africa Radio. Today, the 10th of November 2014, I have Dr. Aziz Dao, a Libyan national, who has joined us in the studio this evening to talk about more pressing issue, why the Libya is now in a state that it is today. Why did we even go to Libya? And the ambassadors, supposedly the ambassadors of Libya, who were to be trained as soldiers to go and defend the territorial integrities of their country, coming here to embarrass the whole country. They went to Turkey and Libya and Italy. There's similar things happen over there. Dr. Aziz, thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Before the Gaddafi was taken out, before he was killed, there was a propaganda, or there was a statement during the war that Gaddafi has distributed Viagra to his soldiers to use as an act of war to fight in Libya. That means that they are raping women on the streets of Libya, or raping women in Libya. Is that vice versa? Have we now seen those who were using Viagra in Libya to fight?
No.
Seeing that some of the soldiers, some people were taken to Britain to be trained to go and augment the effort of the Libyan defense forces. Now, some are even raping men, and they go to outside harassing women. Have we seen the side of the Libyans that we supported to get rid of Gaddafi?
Actually, what had happened to Libya is those people who came to UK to train as a Libyan soldier, actually, they are not. They are just a bunch of dead squads who's being supported by NATO, by most of the Western, to get rid of the Gaddafi. They are not belong to the Libyan Army Institute, who is during that Libyan Civil War 2011, they just called as a Gaddafi soldier. What's that mean? That mean every aspect in Libya has been tagged as belong to the Gaddafi, which is not. This Libyan Army Institute is been over 60 years old. The Gaddafi himself was belong to this institute. They been tagged as the Gaddafi to get rid of the Gaddafi. When they get rid of the Gaddafi, all the Libyan soldiers who belong to that institute are in three positions. Either he's hiding somewhere, or he's in detainees centers, which is concentrated camp in Benghazi or in Misrata cities, or in some armed militia, either in Zawiya cities or Tripoli city, or the others is being killed. During the 2011, who's stand against the intervention of the NATO. Those people who came as trained as a Libyan become a Libyan soldier. They are none. They are just armed militia gangs. All the reports, if those the secret agency who worked during 2011 Libyan civil wars, if they come and bring their reports, you will see a lot of shameless list and behavior has been done. Let me take you, Brother Adam, to another listeners. We have, as a Libyan Army Institute, they have a contract with the British government, 2008, 2009, cost more than 80 million. Why we didn't hear about that contract and what had happened to those Libyans soldiers who came over 2011, 2010 and trained belonging to the Libyan Army Institute? what had happened to them? Where are they? They came peacefully. They did their training because there was law and order. There was belong to the institute who follow orders, and they went. Nobody hear about them. But those guys,
so in
they
terms,
are not
you are
belong
saying those who were brought into Britain by Mr. Cameron, his generosity to train soldiers so that Libya can be once again a peaceful country where thugs, where militias, where people who were not under any command but were chosen by tribal leaders and their militia group to become to be taken to Britain for training.
No, they are coming to the Britain because they are those lucrative contract to steal Libyan money. There is no institute for Libya to bring those bunch. Sorry to say that they are at the end of the day they are still Libyan nationalists, but they are just a gang. They did squats. One of them they came out and say the Britain didn't tell us what we should do and what we shouldn't. What they can tell you to harassments. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The tip of iceberg.
Well,
is what's going on.
I will come back to you, Elizabeth.
Yes,
this is the reason why we got rid of. We get involved in foreign wars to support some element to overthrow their government without the fundamental basics of the culture of the country. We did that to get rid of Gaddafi. We got rid of Saddam Hussein. We wanted Libya to be once again very peaceful. So on our humanitarian and our moral grounds, we wanted to train soldiers for Libya. Did we vet them before bringing them to the United Kingdom to receive this formal training?
Adam, I'll be with you in a minute. I just want to pop back because I think I might have confused your listeners earlier on when I was confusing Siemens and Bombardier. Just wanted to confirm that as a result of EU membership, Bombardier lost the Thameslink contract to Siemens, which we lost 1.6 billion and lost 1,400 jobs in Derby. So just want to make clear to the listeners, I did get it's somewhat confused. Right, so back to Libya. Right, did we vet them? Probably not, no. Was our intervention in Iraq and Libya sound and rational? Good God, no. Why? Because it's all organised by the idealistic Jesus clowns employed by the Foreign Office, who I don't think have much contact with reality. It is absolutely outlandish that these young Libyans, well, no disrespect to the Libyans, but these young Libyans have turned up in Bassingbourn, population of 3,500. The MOD gave assurances, very strict assurances to the public that none of these youngsters would be going off-site. However, that was somewhat misleading, and they said that the youngsters were allowed off-site, and you can appreciate what on earth's happened. We've got one man being raped by two of the Libyans. Well, it's no laughing matter, Adam. We've had a situation whereby...
These are the kind of people that are our allies when it comes to our policies to get rid of a solid and strong leadership for particular geographical location. We support everybody. We would align ourselves to anyone whatsoever to achieve our aim. So isn't it a clear message to the British people that when it comes to our government telling us to support a war, we have to have our independent study to find out what kind of war are we launching and why are we doing that kind of war anywhere in the world.
I couldn't agree more, Adam, and this is why UKIP supports a policy of non-interventionism. We have seen the absolute catastrophe in Afghanistan, absolute catastrophe in Iraq and Afghanistan, Syria as well. Not that, well, I think we do have some military presence there, and of course Libya. Absolute catastrophe. Nothing is gained by this. It seems to be a total lose-lose situation. I do not know. Even if you were a conspiracy theorist and you thought this is to do with the introduction of the New World Order and they're after the oil, look what's happened in Libya now. There's a whole gang of Tuareg fighters have turned up in one of the areas. Is it Al-Sharara in Libya, and they're now squatting there, and oil production I think is more or less stopped for a while. So if we were saying, oh, it's to do with oil production, it's New World Order, well, the very mechanism of removing Gaddafi has in fact blighted that. So absolutely irrational, built on a false premise of liberal interventionism, which is patronising and racist, brought about by the Labour Party, whereby the Labour Party think they can swoop down. They know best about other people's countries and how they run, and they know best, so they'll just come along and remove a very strong leader. He may have been many things, but let us not forget that Gaddafi did give the people free electricity, free water, significant subsidies to get married, significant subsidies to travel abroad,
to study,
free to travel abroad,
agriculture, housing,
education, housing. And things were stable. I understand they were right. I appreciate he was very harsh. I appreciate toward the end of his reign, he may not have been as kind. I appreciate it may have been a bit of a police state. But it seems to me that
there wasn't cameras on the streets of Libya watching you moving out of your house and coming in your house.
No, you didn't have the absolute fragmentation and ethnic hatred we have now.
Well, Mahmoud, now that we've seen the color of the people that we support outside, would you ever believe in any warmongering that we should intervene, the British public should intervene somewhere else?
No, I don't think we should intervene. I think when we say intervene, there's ways of intervening. Simply by going in and training people to take away a government and then not having a true democratic government that's going to reflect on the people to replace it with is not the way forward. That's the way back. We've seen this in Afghanistan, we've seen this in Iraq, we've seen it now in Libya. What we need to do is work together and build and really let organically let countries develop. We mustn't just think that we know best for others. And just to put a positive note on that, bear in mind Libya now that I do hear the stock exchange is about to open, so the country can sort of bring some kind of normality to it and some sort of structure to it.
Where a country that has its presidency sitting near Egypt, under a click of arms they will all run into Egypt, would they have a stock?
Well, absolutely agree, but that's the positive I'm giving you. I'm giving you the steps that be done. I'm not saying that suddenly it's become stable, because what you're going to say with Libya is the people that were fighting Colonel Gaddafi wasn't one sect of people or one school of thought. It was different people from different schools of thought with different interests. In Libya, then again, you've got to understand that any country that has porous borders across and shares it with many also has many sort of ethnic makeup then, and just gives you some of the neighbours, how many countries Libya shares its borders with: Tunisia, Algeria, Nigeria, Chad and Egypt. So all of those things has
and Sudan,
and all of these countries have an influence there. So it's very difficult. I don't know why we got involved. I don't think we got involved in the right way and did the right thing. Absolutely agree.
Well, listeners, you still tune into Voice of Africa Radio. 48 minutes after 7 o'clock, we are now discussing our generosity package for the government of Libya, that we want to give the Libyan forces a touch of the notch training, international standard, so that they can go and then defend the territorial integrities and maintain peace in Libya. But it tends to be something else. Jacqueline, how can you bring a disciplined soldier to your country to receive training, and it ends up that the soldier that you are bringing in becomes a rapist and a thug who will just run to the corner shop, jump over fence and run to the corner shop and buy alcohol? Do you think that the British government did it due diligence before getting these young men into Britain?
Well, war and capitalism are integral. You don't have capitalism without war. It's built on wars. Looting, rape, pillage. This is what capitalism came out of. The absolute destruction of peoples, tribes. You know who's been wiped out. You talk of New Zealand, go and speak to the Maoris, the ones who are left. You talk of Australia, go and talk to the blinking, I can't even remember.
Aborigines.
Thank you. Because you know, go and talk to them how kind we were.
War
and poverty. Wars are fought by businessmen. They're called the capitalist class, and their wives and their families. They are fought by businessmen, men and women. We do the fighting. We, the workers, we are the ones. It's our children. You're talking about soldiers, disciplined soldiers being taken from one place to another. This is how capitalism works. If you want a new iPhone, going to the Congo, the workers will be there digging the mine for that one special mineral piece that is needed in every iPhone. Foxconn, they're killing themselves in China, jumping out of buildings. I talk about the workers. This man here, Vaz, the Liberal Democrat, the most important people are business people. How dare you? It is the workers who do everything. We man the streets. We maintain the properties. We maintain everything. We produce everything for a wage, for a salary. Whether we're coming from Libya to England, from Cuba to wherever, it is the workers who are the most important.
Well,
and when they realise that and use the vote to get rid of Elizabeth, prostitution is not illegal. Curb crawling and soliciting are. You want to be accurate? Socialists of the World Socialist Party, we like to be, of the World Socialist Movement, I beg your pardon, we like to be clear and concise. Workers, wake up and take your votes, vote for world socialism and get rid of the Lib Dems and all the rest of them. I can't even... War is part of capitalism.
Well, you thought
you are
into
killing
Voice of
our
Africa.
children.
Jacqueline, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam.
Dr. Aziz, now that these boys have been sent home, where lies their security? Because we know Libya now is not very safe. And seeing as they've been to Britain to disgrace Libya as a country, do you think that these boys will be received peacefully in Libya, or there is punishment await them, and even now some of them are in detention?
Nobody care about those boys, because what's happening in Libya right now, there is a war in the capital of Benghazi. We lost lives day and night. There is a war in the west mountain of Libya. There is two government. There is two institute. One is illegal institute.
Which one is the illegal and which one is the legal?
The legal one, which is one in east part, and illegal one, which is capture the capital of the Tripoli, and it's in Tripoli. It's leading by the armed militia coming from Fajr, Libya, which is
Misrata.
From Misrata city, Zawiya city, and some of the armed militia in Tripoli.
But the Misrata and Zawiya were the stronghold of Muammar Gaddafi, isn't it?
Used to be the stronghold of the Gaddafis, and now they are leading all these gangs around. Even more than 9,000 detainees has been still in detainee centers in Misrata. The situation in Libya, it's beyond the chaos. It's disasters, and nobody care about Libya anymore. When they went to Libya, they went to kill the Gaddafi, and they say what they in the media every day to protect the civilians. Why they didn't talk about Libya now, whereas more than 2 million has been refugee in neighborhood countries, either in Tunisia and Egypt, and
a lot of them
Europe.
have died on the Mediterranean.
Despite that, there is the flood of the immigrant from Africa to Europe is coming through Libya, and most of them, they're paying a lot of money to those gangs, and even they shoot them, they kill them. If you hear the story of survival in Italy or in Malta, you see a horrible story what had happened to them in Libya, or because Libya is now completely war zone. Ordinary Libyan, they don't go out after 7 o'clock in the evening. Most of that, why? Because they are this war. NATO or the most of the Western government went to Libya.
Let me
Yes,
ask Elizabeth.
yes, Adam.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
We caused a tune
Was a what?
We caused the tune in Libya. We destroyed an organized institution in Libya by getting rid of Gaddafi. Why can't we remedy the situation? The same as we bombed Libya, why can't we go in there to organize for a proper institutions to get Libyan to understand that there is one thing that they need to fight for, which is the integrity and the oneness of the people of Libya? Why don't the NATO, the Britain that sponsors, and France that sponsored the resolution 1973 do that? Why?
Well, I understand there's quite a French presence in Libya. Britain is not going to go in. There's been enough chaos caused by our interventionist policy. I don't think it's right that we should go in again. I think we should stay well away from Libya and let Libya resolve its issues its way.
So we just went in to destroy it and then run back and say we don't want to go in and remedy the situation.
I don't think that we went in to destroy. I have no idea of the patterns of thought that run through the Jesus clowns employed at the Foreign Office. It's these idealistic people with their head in this clouds who make these decisions in their little think tanks, all these sort of public schooly types.
So why,
who no experience of life.
Shouldn't they be held responsible for some of the decisions they make,
I think
or
they
the
should be. I think we should actually know who these people are. I would really like to know who the people are who all got together and thought, hey, yeah, let's bomb the crap out of Gaddafi. Hey, let's go and remove Saddam Hussein. I think that we should, as taxpayers and as the electorate, should have the right to know who these people are. It'd be very interesting information to see exactly who recommended the government to take this course of action. Having said that, having done the damage, we should not go back again. We certainly do not want to add to anyone's misery. And again, as I say again, we certainly don't want the Jesus clowns of the Foreign Office getting their hands into Libya again. Look at the state in Iraq. We tried in Iraq. That's gone.
British forces will soon go back to Iraq.
No, I don't think they will go en masse. I know they've already got special forces.
We are going.
Well, we've got special forces, about 100 over there. I don't think we're going to get troops over there.
Well, Mahmoud, Fiaz, what do you think Libyans should do now to bring the dignity of their country back?
We're very poignant. I think the Libyan people have to think, to work together, unite themselves together, bring the country back in a united form and try and work together. Don't fight amongst yourselves. Please, work together. You have a great country with a great potential, but that cannot be achieved if you're fighting amongst yourselves.
Well, one thing I need to add is actually the remedy for the Libyan actually to encourage dialogue between those parties, to enforce some sort of restriction on the princes of war who is now looting the country and doing that. Enforce some restriction of the other nationals who was coming to the Libya, like Qatar. Like Sudan, like Turkey government, those support the Lord and those the others.
Yes,
yes, Adam. Well, I think the African Union should play a very big part in this. I mean, as we discussed,
African Union is useless.
Well, why is it useless? They've got 54.
Because it's useless. If African Union is not useless, they wouldn't have. The European Union wouldn't have got rid of Gaddafi.
We've got 54 African states in the African Union, and part of their manifesto is to promote peace, security and stability on the continent.
Because of that manifesto, that is why they got rid of Dr. Nkrumah, the proponent of the African Union. On this note, I will thank you. Before we go, Jacqueline would have a little to add to it before we sum up. Jacqueline, your advice to the workers in Libya in a second.
Our advice is, firstly, we send our regards and our fraternalship. We have no war with the workers in
Thank
anywhere
you very
in
much,
the world.
Jacqueline. I have today, Jacqueline was in the studio with me. I have Dr. Aziz Do. I have Mahmoud, First Liberal Democrat, and Elizabeth. Thank you very much. Join us same time next week. Bye.